Good afternoon and welcome to this regular council meeting of Monday, October 7th, 2024. We'll call the meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. Begin with the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Kabamonagan is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory in the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe people. We offer our gratitude to First Nations for their care for and teachings about these lands. May we honor these teachings. I'll look to council for approval of the agenda before us today, moved by Councilor Byrne, seconded by Councilor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there is no closed session, so we'll move right into the presentation portion of the meeting. Mr. Fleming, I believe, is joining us online. Tony, are you with us? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Your Worship?
We can. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Worship. So before council today, Your Worship, is an Integrity Commissioner investigation report. The member of council that is subject to the investigation is Councilor Byrne. This was a investigation with respect to confidential information provisions of the Code of Conduct. In the report, I've excerpted the various provisions from the Code of Conduct. This was effectively not a situation where the member of council was accused of disclosing confidential information, but rather of making use of the confidential information. And the use made of it was that a member of the public had come to council with a real estate opportunity, I'll call it, and the member attempted to contact the member of the public to discuss that. And the only way that the member of council knew that that opportunity existed was from confidential information presented or provided to members of council. So in this case, the breach of confidentiality is reaching out to the member of the public. As I understand the facts, the member of the public was not comfortable discussing the opportunity with the council member, and nothing was really discussed. And so the findings from the report that the quote use of the information, which is what's required to find a breach of the Code of Conduct, was the member of council taking the information and then using that information to make contact with the member of the public. So there was no financial gain or personal gain by the member that we found after our investigation. The member was very forthcoming in terms of his view that because he was trying to obtain confidential information, it wasn't a breach of the Code of Conduct. In fact, it is a breach of the conduct. The member just didn't appreciate how the code worked with respect to the obligation not to do anything with that confidential information. So we did find that it was a breach. We do find, however, that the breach didn't result in, as we're understanding it, any significant negative impacts to the municipality. But as stated in the report, in situations like this, there could be negative impacts. So it's important that council appreciate that when they have this type of confidential information, the duty imposed by the Code of Conduct is not to use it in any way, shape, or form. Our recommendation for council's consideration is that council issue a reprimand to the member, just to ensure that the member understands and the rest of council understands that council doesn't condone how the information was used. So with that very high level overview, Your Worship, I'm happy to take questions from council about the recommendation.
No, thank you for that, Tony. Thanks for summarizing that. We did discuss this in closed session, so there's an understanding now, but more clarity. This just reinforces that clarity about this incident. So I'm sure there won't be further instances or evidence of such behavior moving forward with all of council. So it's a good learning experience, and we appreciate you guiding us through this sort of how the process works, and we appreciate that learning experience. So questions, members of council, with regards to the presentation? Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, for the record, I never intended to break the law. I apologize for my actions, and I apologize for my ignorance in this matter. And I'm more worried that the people I represent I've let down in my attempt to do this job. And I look forward to their decision on it now that it's been made public. I would ask the one question, in the report, you referenced we and our, which would represent plural terms. If you could enlighten me on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
And you'll have to be a little more, or through you, your worship, you'll have to be a little more specific, Councillor, in terms of what was referenced with we and our. Is there a particular paragraph or comment you're referring to?
I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me. It was just in the write-up that you issued. It just, the recommendations seem plural, and I thought you were the Integrity Commissioner.
Through you, your worship, I understand it. It's me referring to myself in the third person, which I appreciate can be a little awkward. But when I say we, I'm talking about the office of the Integrity Commissioner. I think that's what you're referring to.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted the clarity.
Yes. Yep. Understood.
All right, seeing no other questions, Tony, the only other question I have for you with regards to the motions, just so that we're fulfilling our obligations of transparency, if we add that report that you provided to council add to the public agenda as an addendum after the fact, does that fulfill our transparency obligations?
Yeah, through your worship, the only obligation in the Municipal Act is that council decide how to make the report public, so long as adding it as an addendum to the agenda would be publicly available. That should be fine.
Okay. Yeah, I believe it does. I mean, it hasn't been on the agenda with their presentation, so I think that checks that box, and clerk's nodding, so that seems good. Any other questions? If not, we have two recommendations: that we receive the code of conduct complaint final report from Mr. Fleming, and that council make a final report public by adding it to the agenda, as I just mentioned. So any other questions? If not, we can take a mover and a seconder for that. But thank you also, Councillor Byrne, for the mea culpa. I appreciate that, and we're all clear moving forward, and we look forward to it. Moved by Councillor Nash, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you, Mr. Fleming. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your work. And we'll hopefully not see you too soon.
I hear that a lot. Thank you.
Cheers. Moving on to 7.1, we have delegations. Mr. Sakosha, Manager of Engineering and Design, Peterborough County Road Transfer Rationalization Policy. Do you know if Kyle or Pete, are you planning to speak as well, or no? Okay, just Doug. Thank you, Doug. Welcome.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Good afternoon, council, staff, and members of the public. I'm pleased to be here today to present our draft road rationalization policy. This up a bit. Next slide, please. So there we go. I do have with me today our design supervisor, Kyle Darling, as well as Pete Hines. He's our senior project coordinator. Both these gentlemen put a lot of hard work into the draft policy that is in front of you today, and they are available after for questions as well. Next slide, please. So as background information for council, in 2022, Peterborough County updated our transportation master plan. And as part of that, there were over 80 recommendations, with a draft road rationalization policy being one of them. And really the intent of this policy is to come up with some criteria and a process or protocol when we're considering jurisdictional reviews, just to ensure we're consistent at the county when considering these reviews. I do want to note at this stage, though, that the policy is meant to be initiated both from the county, with a road being transferred to the lower tier, but it can also be initiated by the lower tier, transferring a road up to the county. So it's meant to go in a process in both ways. One thing that we did learn when we did conduct a review of other policies in Ontario, and this is very key to this, is when a policy was created by the upper tier without collaboration or consultation with the lower tier, a lot of those policies actually failed in nature. And as you'll see, as we go through this presentation today, we have put a lot of emphasis on collaboration and consultation. And we do want to say thanks to all township staff that attended those sessions, as they really were able to weigh in and change the draft policy in front of you. Next slide, please. So principles. So what should be a county road? Some of these are fairly intuitive, but we'll just go through them quickly. So the first one being primarily that a transportation corridor at a county level is meant for moving services and goods of people only. The second is capable of being upgraded to a reasonable state. So really looking at a road, and if you can't upgrade the vertical or horizontal geometry, then it's probably not a good county road. It should be direct and intuitive, and it should also not be redundant, meaning there shouldn't be two parallel corridors in the county. The next we have is that it should complement the provincial highways. So whether it be the 115 as an example, Really what we would see is that those local roads or township roads, you move traffic over a county road, and then the county road ultimately moves that traffic over to the provincial highway. And last year, which is key, is within settlement areas, again, the point of the county road is to move through traffic. So really at the county level, we're not worrying about or focusing on the community improvement. We would want to look at a road that's really moving traffic through that settlement area only. Next slide, please. So the framework for the policy, we have 7 steps, and I won't dwell too long on this slide as we're going to actually go through each of those steps in a little bit more detail. So next slide, please. So step number 1 is identification of the candidate roads. And again, just want to reiterate in this slide that a road can be identified both from the lower tier, so they can initiate the process through the county's draft policy, as well as the county can initiate that process to take a road and transfer it to the lower tier. But at an early stage, you'll see here that we're saying both parties must be in agreement at step 1. So if either one of those councils or staff don't feel that that's appropriate, that would essentially stop this process right there. So we want to see that collaboration in step 1 as opposed to near the end of the process. Next slide, please. Step number 2 is around scoring of candidate roads. This step is very technical in nature, as you could have seen in the draft policy that was circulated, and it is based upon the Ontario Good Roads Association methodology. However, we did take that and refine it to our, I would say, our region. So we noted some of the criteria in there had some focus on more of a GTA centric, some of the criteria. So we wanted to remove that and really make it our own. And that's where we landed with all the criteria that's on the slide. We won't go through each one today, but as an example, when I say it's technical in nature, for example, a traffic volume, when a candidate road is being reviewed, we would look at the traffic volume on that road, and we conduct spring, summer, and fall counts. So it is meant to capture all seasons. And as you can imagine, the higher the traffic, it's really pushing a higher score, meaning it's trending towards being a county road. But what you want to do is when assessing all those criteria, it's the sum of all those scoring in the end that really will dictate the overall score of that road. Next slide, please. So review of scoring results is step number 3. And we've created this chart on the top left of the screen to really summarize how it's going to be assessed. And so if a road currently scores less than 4.5 and it's existing county road, we're saying we recommend to actually transfer the road to the lower tier because it's a low score. Flip to that is if it's an existing township road and it scored less than 4.5, we're saying it should remain a township road. If it scored higher than 7, and it was an existing county road, it would remain a county road. So the transfer also wouldn't occur. And the flip to that is obviously, if it was an existing lower tier road being transferred to the county, scored greater than or equal to 7, then we're saying we would recommend a transfer. One thing though, when staff were looking at this policy is it's always hard to think of every example. And so what we want to do is create what we call a gray zone. And that's the scoring between 5 and 6.5. And really, if it scores in that range, we're saying we want to take and look at additional criteria to say what makes sense for that ownership. So if it was scored at say 6, we're saying that's close to being a county road. Is there something additionally we could consider that would trend or push that to be a county road? So next slide, please. So step number 4, it does apply where it's other criteria or considerations. And these are just some of the ones we thought of on the screen. But really, when we got to this step, if it was to occur, it would be collaboration between the county staff and the township staff. But things that you can imagine, if it's scored in that range, we might want to look at would be, say, road maintenance. So it could be patrol roads and efficiency on that route. Transferring this road, if that meant we had to send a plow further distance, going to cost more, be less efficient. Well, that might be additional criteria or considerations we really want to determine the jurisdiction of that road. It could be future development. So maybe the traffic volume today isn't there on that road, but we do know a big development's coming. So we can look at it now and say, let's get ahead of that based upon future development in the area. So those are just some of the considerations listed. But again, this range, just want to reiterate, is really meant to be a gray zone where we're looking for more staff collaboration and discussion on appropriate jurisdiction. Step number 5 is reporting. So when we get to this step, the infographic on the left of your screen, we've tried to color code it to show the difference between county and township. And so in blue, the first thing is a formal staff report is prepared. That's then provided to township staff for review. We have in there, and this was based upon some of the consultation we had with township staff, is a consensus meeting can be held if appropriate. So we would sit down, both parties, we would discuss how we got to that scoring and that summary. If needed, though, it may not be needed in all situations, but we wanted to have it in there if it was appropriate to do so. And then the last step there is that township staff would then provide that back to council where required. So again, Understanding that we're trying to do this as regionally, each of the 8 lower tiers, some may want this, some may want. So we wanted to have that flexibility in the policy where the option was to go back before their councils before proceeding to the next step. Because once you get to step number 6, there may be some small costs associated with step number 6. Step number 6 is around the development of conditions. So as you can imagine, we're now at a stage where we're saying we should transfer a road. A lot of factors, and again, the infographic is just showing some of the development or some of the conditions that may apply to this road transfer. But things like the transferee's road standards. So what type of state would that road have to be in if transferred? Even the cost to do so. So if it was in currently poor shape, how much would it cost to bring it up to standard? And how do you want to do that? Do you want to do that as a financial concession, or would you rather upgrade the road to that state and then transfer it? And again, these things will vary on different roads and different processes, and it all depends on, the different decisions made at the county and the township level. Some may want to upgrade it themselves, that road, and then transfer it. Some might say, no, it's easier to do the cash and it's better for the other agency to do it. So that's why these are just some of the conditions, but we did want to note that the condition of the road, the cost, things like that are being considered in this policy. And the last step is the actual implementation. So fairly straightforward, but again, reiterating that collaboration. Very first step here, we're asking for a resolution both from the county and the township. So both parties have to agree again at this stage to do that transfer. If not, the transfer wouldn't progress. From there, we would obviously engage a legal. So that's where they may have to develop a plan of survey as well as legal transfer documents. Ultimately, it comes back for county and township bylaws. So that might be a roads consolidation bylaw update to transfer that road. And the last thing we didn't want to miss in this policy is just really for both staff at a county and township level to say if the road and when it's transferred, there are other planning documents. So it could be an asset management plan, it could be official plan, documents like that that you would have to update as well when the road was transferred. So on this stage, again, just reiterating, you've heard me say it a lot, but consultation through this process. So again, want to really say thanks to all the staff that were involved. We held 2 sessions, one on April 9th. And at that first session, we really honed in that technical criteria. We did give a 2-week period where we received comments back and we made those changes to the draft criteria. And then the second session was on June 27th, where we really looked at the protocol or the process of the policy itself. So not the criteria, more of the process. And again, we had a comment period where township staff could then review it and provide that feedback back that ultimately lands in the draft policy today. So next steps for staff is ultimately, actually, this is the last township council meeting that we'll be at. We've been to the other 7 townships. Essentially what we wanted to do is go to before all the lower tiers to receive the recommendation that's in front of you today, as well as take any comments or questions. So with that, the next step, or sorry, next slide there is really questions before we get to I believe there's a staff report as well associated with this presentation.
Thank you for that presentation, Doug. Yep, I know it's been an ongoing effort. Questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, so I understand this is just a proposal for a way of doing things in the future. There's no roads that are being recommended or under survey right now for any land change between county and the townships. What I was curious about, when you talk about parallel roads, is that strictly parallel between 2 county roads, or would a township road that ran in the same direction for the same distance count as a parallel road?
Through you, Mayor. Excellent question. And just to highlight the first part of that comment is this is a policy at this stage, so no roads are being considered. First, we wanted to establish a policy so we're consistent when requests come forth. But the second part is in relation to parallel corridors, and that's meant to be county roads. So really, we're saying we don't want to have 2 parallel county roads. Again, we don't want those redundant rules. We're trying to take traffic from the local road, bring it to the county road, ultimately up to that provincial highways. So the scoring that's built in there would say if there's 2 parallel county roads, then that would have basically not a high score for that.
Thanks for that answer, Doug. I had 2 questions. One, but in reading the policy, I was glad to see that there's a capture about the understanding that, there's a financial implications for the upload or transfer, however that's going to work. I was kind of surprised. are you worried at all that this might be where everything kind of breaks down? Like, because there doesn't seem to be a clean sort of or mediation process or how we're going to decide or determine potentially between an upper tier and a lower tier, what's fair compensation for whatever specific piece of road you're talking about. Because I know there can't be like a carte blanche policy, but that was the only limitation to me. I just don't know if it's clear or not within the policy how understanding in the majority of circumstances, we can mediate, we can negotiate, come to an agreement. But in the event that there is an impasse and it's not necessarily coming to council yet for an endorsement, because you kind of have to have the terms established for them to say yes or no. Can you sort of coach me through that process, or is there something like within the policy or how that would be managed?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Another excellent question. And we actually do have a line in the policy for that exact situation where what we would look at is an external engineering consultant. So again, that cost would be shared. But we would agree on one party that would look at this. There are engineering standards that would say this is based upon that standard, this is what it would cost to upgrade. So it would be an impartial third party that would ultimately come in and say, this is what the cost of that would be worth to upgrade.
And then the second question is there, and this should be no surprise to you, Doug, from the conversations we've had, is there any consideration for a same sort of rationalization policy for other pieces of assets in the county, such as bridges?
Through you, Mayor, again, excellent question. At this time, we are starting with the roads policy. So I'm not saying in the future there may not be for structures or bridges, there may be a similar policy that gets established. But at this time, all I can speak to is the roads rationalization policy.
No problem. Thank you. Other questions? Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, I was kind of looking for a definition of what you call intuitive. And going forward, because the emphasis for county roads is to move traffic, is there going to be some direction to, instead of having more entrances onto county roads, that we either some kind of service road or some laneway off, that the bulk of the traffic isn't coming on and off the county roads at a steady pace?
Through you, Mayor. So the first part of that is around direct and intuitive. And so really the definition of what we're trying to say there is we're not looking for that scenic road. We're trying to make the most direct road there. So we're trying to take the traffic, as I said, move it from a lower tier road to the county road and ultimately up to the provincial road. So that's really what that statement's trying to say, is to avoid the scenic roads. And the second part around our entrance bylaw, we did recently pass an updated entrance bylaw where we do look to have spacing restrictions as well as safety restrictions. So that bylaw is currently in place that would, if it was a county road, it would be regulated under that bylaw.
Other questions, member of council? If not, thanks for the presentation, Doug. We do have a report. We have another presenter coming in, so we can move it up, I believe, with the legal portion. So we'll be getting to that report at a later date in the agenda here. So if you don't mind, I don't know, are you planning to hang out or do you got to get back? I wasn't sure. Up to you. That's a clerk question, but it really depends. So anyways, if not, staff can collect the questions and disseminate them, and then we can go from there. So we'll do it that way, just to save you time, and we can get you guys back to work. But thank you for the presentation. We need a motion to receive the presentation and policy, or the road transfer rationalization policy for information. Councilor Byrne, Councilor Edgerton, all in favor? That is approved. Thanks, Doug. Thank you guys for joining us today. Moving on, we have lots of minutes that we need to approve, so I can do the two special meetings, both September 16th and 17th, and the regular meeting held on September 16th. We can do those together. I want to get the verbiage right, that those minutes be approved as presented. Councilor Byrne, Councilor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. We also then have several other minutes, the River Valley Trails meeting minutes of April 24th and May 15th and June 24th, and the Municipal Revitalization and Heritage minutes of June 20th, and the Sustainability Advisory Committee minutes of July 19th be approved as presented. Moved by Councilor Natchoff, seconded by Councilor Byrne, all in favor? Those are approved. And last but not least, we have the Kevin Monaghan Public Library Board minutes of June 18th, and that those minutes be received for information. Moved by Councilor Natchoff and Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor. That is approved. All right, we move on to the reports portion of the agenda, and AJ is joining us online, I believe. Ms. Hurley, do you want to provide some introductory comments with regards to the purchasing bylaw review and amendment report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. The little loud. The recommendation before council is that council repeal its entirety bylaw 2020-22 and passes the procurement of goods and services bylaw 2024-54, respecting the fair transparency, accountability, and procurement of goods and services, also known as the purchasing policy. Today, I'm very pleased we had our solicitor AJ with us from Airden Burles, and AJ was instrumental in drafting this new purchasing policy for us. And so if council has any questions, AJ is standing by and to answer any questions that council might have.
AJ, just to confirm that you're with us, can you hear everything okay?
Yes, your worship. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Nice. Thank you for joining us today. I understand you might be slightly under the weather, so but hope you're feeling better and on the mend soon.
Appreciate
Questions with regards to the purchasing policy report, members of council for AJ. Councilor Brand.
Through the chair, so the overview kind of led me to believe there's only a couple of things changed. But when I tried to compare page to page from the last document in 2022, there's a lot of numbering changes and some paragraphs changed. Some omissions that I kind of curious about. My big problem is the idea that you want to ask council to give up some control in regard to purchasing, with the concept that 2 employees doing all this behind closed doors is somehow more transparent than 5 elected officials that the township can get rid of at the next election. So I have an issue with that. But one of the things that we talk about right off the start, if you could, 11.4 about the disposal of surplus properties and stuff. It's been added, that wasn't mentioned. I was going to ask you if I could, first off, this idea that council or a member of council will no longer be allowed to look at when the tenders are opened. In the previous package or bylaw, even the public was welcome, and now it looks like that's going to be taken away. Am I correct in that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct. It's moving it in line with the direction most municipalities are going with that respect. In the opening of tenders, this is moving it in part from the governance role of council, where you set the policy and set the agenda, and the administration of the award of a procurement. So I think of it as 2 steps and stages. In the governance approach, council as a body sets the policy direction, sets it through budget, sets it through this bylaw, as well as other policies. And then the functional mechanics of going through the procurement process, say you go through an RFP, for instance, and it goes out and you have a number of bidders that are involved, and they submit their bids, and it's evaluated on the basis of a technical criteria by members of staff and the evaluation committee. Then it is in turn awarded to the best scoring bidder in that context. There is, and this is a discussion I've had with a number of municipal councils, because I understand that concern, because the primary role of council is still the appropriate financial oversight. The difficulty is at that point in the process where you're making a determination of the award, there's risk in moving away from the best scoring bidder, for instance, and the lowest price or the best scoring bidder, depending on the context. And if at that point in time the decision is made to go in a different direction, it can create a chance of legal risk or liability of claim from a bidder who have otherwise been successful and becomes the unsuccessful bidder. It creates an amount of risk to the municipal corporation as a corporate entity, in a claim for business losses and loss of economic opportunity. So that's been in the direction typically that most municipalities have now been going. Historically, it was done the other way. But from a risk perspective, that's the reason why that change is made, and why a number of municipalities have been considering going in that direction, sir, through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that, AJ. If I'm understanding correctly, I believe, and I don't necessarily agree with it either, but from my understanding as well, there's been a lot of legislative changes in the provincial context about, sort of these sorts of mechanisms that might, in a way, seem to reduce the municipal role. Is that a fair statement? Because I know that was the foundation of why we needed to get this policy updated, was because of the amount of legislative changes involved in the procurement process.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there have been a number of changes at the provincial and the federal level. The federal provincial is a little bit tricky in the context of municipal procurement because the federal government doesn't, of course, bind municipalities through their legislation. But there have been two notable trade agreements. One is the trade agreement between Canada and the European Union, CETA, and then the CFTA, which is an intermunicipal trade agreement with the idea of reducing trade barriers between provincial governments in Canada. And both of those agreements cover municipalities where they didn't before. So there hasn't been, I think that this is a bit challenging in the sense that there hasn't yet been a provincial amendment to the Municipal Act, and they haven't passed, for instance, a regulation with respect to the policy for goods and services procurement that I think would be useful to municipalities across Ontario in responding to these trade agreements and these changes. So there have been legislative actions, but there hasn't been an amendment to the Municipal Act controlling or altering the text in 270 and the required policies.
But there has been seemingly a significant, what's the right word, evolution from the legal standpoint from the municipal circumstance, which is pretty clear from some of the changes that are proposed in here. Is that a fair statement?
Correct, sir.
Other questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair. Through the chair. Again, I really think from the public point of view, this goes against the concept of being transparent. I, for one, realize that if you look at the federal government and the amount of corruption that's coming to light, that people are skeptical of politicians. I don't blame them a bit. But at the same time, I think if you ask most of them, lawyers probably rank right up there too in the same regard. But what I'm looking at here is the fact that I don't see how we take this out of the public domain as far as having elected officials. Case in point for me is I've seen the last budget. We expanded or increased departmental budgets. And then we hired another individual full-time on staff with it ever coming before council as a discussion. I look at this from a taxpayer point of view, not so much as a councillor point of view, that if you're trying to tell the public that we are upfront, honest, transparent, and trying to do everything we can, I don't understand why we're taking council out of the picture. And then again, taking the public out of the picture in regard to these tender ones. I don't understand the concept.
It seemed more like a commentary than a question. So other questions, members of council? Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair, I guess I'm gonna have a little more of a commentary than a question myself. And that is that I do understand the process in the fact that when we open up the RFPs and we read the prices, then it's just assumed that the lowest price is the winner, which is a mistake. And I don't think that is transparent. And I think that there is an RFP evaluation process that we go through that is more than just a price. And having an RFP presumed won because it has the lowest price is wrong, because it could be uncompliant in many different sections. Other bidders could have much better information or better background or better solutions in behind it. And all of that is taken care of by staff in the background with their committee. And that information is then put in the report when it comes to council for us to make the proper decision based on the recommendation, but we never have to go with the recommendation. But they've done all that criteria checking. So that is actually, very transparent to the public because we get to see the scorecard on how these bidders are ranked. So I think that it's a cleaner process. And I think as you've mentioned, it does take some of that risk off the township for somebody walking out of a room when a bid is opened and a low price is announced that they feel like they've won. And that isn't the case because there is more to an RFP than just the price. And I'm glad we've moved moving to a policy where we acknowledge that. Thank you.
Other questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair to that topic. So on the pre-approved suppliers, what happens when there's more than one that would qualify to be pre-approved? Who gets to make those decisions of which one would get picked? Is there going to be a scorecard for that procedure as well? Or is that going to be an in-house staff decision?
AJ, did you hear that question?
Yes, through you,
Hey,
Mr. Chair, could I ask if the question, for clarification, the question is with respect to 4.1, the pre-approved suppliers list, how that list is created, or how is the question about how you then determine when you have multiple pre-approved suppliers?
Through the chair, yes, more to the point. If more than one could be pre-approved, at what point, at who and what point do they decide who they're going to buy from?
Through you, Mr. Chair, great question from the member. So when you have a pre-approved suppliers list, the department head, for instance, if you're in an RFQ procedure, they would look to the pre-approved suppliers and then be able to get prices from multiple pre-approved suppliers in that context. And given if the goods are exactly the same, they likely are in that context. For example, if you were purchasing gravel, for instance, from a multiple pre-approved suppliers, you'd pick the cheapest one.
Any further question that answers the question? Perfect. I had one question for you, AJ, with regards to the sole sourcing. I was kind of surprised that I thought this might become a little more maybe specific or litigious, but it seems to be fairly open with regards to interpretation when I look at under 5.6.2G. It is advantageous to the municipality to acquire the goods or services directly from another public body or public service. I mean, I don't know if it gets any more generic than that, because how are you going to then quantify advantageousness to, you know, that's a pretty broad interpretable term. Am I wrong? And is that more or less ambiguous than previously? Because I know like, on principle, we're not a fan of sole sourcing, but I mean, there are municipal examples where there's only one, you know, potential client, customer, or there's specializations that eliminate most of the market. But could you maybe just sort of calm my nerves about that section?
Yes, thank you, Chair. 5.6.2G only addresses purchasing from another public body or public service body. So it isn't quite carte blanche in that way. It isn't any sole source supplier. That's sort of if something is being acquired from the county, for instance, or another local area municipality.
So a public body then is still some sort of government entity, or if that was maybe the clarity that I was missing. Okay, thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, on page 72 of my handout, I have no idea, but it's 8.1 of the report. It talks about the best interest of the municipality. How's that defined, and who gets to choose what's in our best interest?
Best interest of the municipality, through you, Mr. Chair, the best interest of the municipality is that of the municipal corporation, and each entity who's making the determination of what constitutes best interests of the municipal corporation. I would go back to the goals put into the policy up front. That's the use of putting the goals of the purchasing policy, the purposes, objectives, and goals at section 1. Whether it's a department head, the CAO, the treasurer, or even members of council, when council's making the decision that's in the best interest of the municipality is exercising our respective fiduciary duties of making the best call with all of the information we have, specifically price, technical score, quality of goods, matching up to existing equipment we may have. The best interest of the municipality is each of those who are wearing that hat, whenever they're making the determination to act in their fiduciary duty to make the best choice for the municipal corporation based upon the respective inputs in that particular procurement. And apologies through you, Mr. Chair, to give a bit of a vague answer in that sense because it differs based on the type of material you're procuring or purchasing. So that may differ if you're retaining a technical report from a consultant engineer, or the previous example, if you're purchasing pea gravel or sand. Those will be different considerations and different criteria. But the best interest is one of fiduciary duty and acting in the best interest of the municipal corporation. That's meant to clarify that you're not acting in the interests of the bidders, for instance, or your own personal interest. In the case of an individual, that you're acting in the best interest of the corporation then rather than of your own accord. And that's particularly important in a procurement context.
So just to summarize that answer, AJ, it could be everything from, I mean, being consistent with the strategic plan, for example, to, you know, various missions and statements throughout the council's direction, or in addition to things as simple as cost. That's kind of what you're saying. It could, and not to say that one, the cost is obviously usually paramount, but it's a factor within the other criteria depending on the procurement that we're talking about, right? Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Councilor Burke.
Through the chair. So item 5.7.2, it looks to me like the definition of emergency got deleted from this bylaw. And that was in the last bylaw, which allows, you know, if things needed to be expedited, they could. I don't really understand that this whole process of giving that authority to staff, it speeds up the process past where it needs to be. But is that definition still exist?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe we just moved it to the definition section. So if you go up to page 3 of the bylaw, and there's a definition of emergency there. So just that's more of a housekeeping point of cleanup. It's in the definitions rather than the body.
Okay. Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, one other item that I was going to ask about, in and around page 80 of the report, or 81, sorry, it identifies minor discrepancies, and it talks about a 24-hour hold. What happens to the other bidders that may or may not have got selected, but the one that might possibly be selected? Does it pause everybody? Is that the way that's going to work?
Through you, Mr. Chair, when you're dealing with minor irregularities and you want to evaluate those, yes, you pause the process. That's at your decision-making process. And then you evaluate the minor irregularity to determine if it is in fact minor and if it can be appropriately cured. But you pause the determination of the award at that point in time for that determination to review a minor irregularity.
Other questions, members of council? Okay, if not, so the recommendation in the report is that council repeals in its entirety bylaw number 2020-22 and passes procurement of goods and services bylaw number 2024-54, respecting the fair, transparent, and accountable procurement of goods and services known as the purchasing policy for the township of Cavan Monaghan. Any questions about the recommendation? Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, could I ask please for a recorded vote?
Ms. Page?
I've got on here. Absolutely, you can have a recorded vote. All we need is a mover and a seconder, and then we'll call for the vote.
So look for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councilor Natchoff, all in favor? That, oh, sorry, excuse me.
Deputy Mayor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Natchoff,
Yes.
Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Edgerton,
No.
Councillor Byrne.
No.
That is carried. Okay, good discussion. Thanks, AJ, for joining us. And like I said, feel better. Yeah, all the best in the recovery. And thanks for joining us in spite of all that.
Thank you
Moving
all.
on in the report, agenda is 10.2, report Public Works 2024 County of Peterborough Road Transfer Rationalization Policy. We've kept the boys waiting. Mr. Hancock, over to you to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, two recommendations before you. Item number one, the council received the Public Works Report 2024-20 regarding the County of Peterborough Road Transfer Rationalization Policy as information. And number two, that council adopt the County of Peterborough Road Transfer Rationalization Policy as the criteria for consideration of the transfer of county roads to the local system and the transfer of township roads to the county system.
Thanks, Wayne. Any questions? Again, this is the policy that was just presented by Doug so graciously joining us. So if not, we'll look for a mover and a seconder for the two recommendations that council received. Public Works Report 2024-20 County of Peterborough Road Transfer Rationalization Policy as information, and the council adopt County of Peterborough Road Transfer Rationalization Policy as the criteria for consideration for the transfer of county roads to the local system and the transfer of township roads to the county system. Moved by Councilor Byrne, seconded by Councilor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Sorry for the suspense, Doug, but all the best and thanks for joining us, everyone, and best of luck. All right, moving on. 10.3, report Public Works, proposed property disposition, municipal property adjoining the fire station site fronting the Highlands Boulevard. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is again, three recommendations before you, and I'll just go through those. That council declare the properties outlined on the draft reference plan, attachment number 1 of our previous report 2024-09 as surplus. The council recommendation number 2 is that council directs staff to proceed with rezoning the property to develop 3 single-family detached residential lots for sale on this property. And recommendation number 3, that council directs staff to provide Tower Hill Developments with the first right of refusal on the purchase of these lots. And just to add to the recommendations, we have been through a process and I think I'll use the term, we're trying to find the best fit for the property as it fits into the Highlands development. And there is a plan attached to this report, which is second to attachment number 1, which is the plan view of Highlands showing, it's referred to as the plan view of Highlands showing the streetscape and the fire hall and the single family lots that are adjoining it. Just looking for the right plan. And it was intended to show to council what the other lots in the area look like that front on Highlands on both to the east side of it and to the south of that. I'm not sure if we can pull that. Can we pull that plan up, Cindy, on the last page there of the report there? That will do anyhow. Just take a second to look at this. One. Let's go to the last one, I think. Last attached on. Oh. There we are. Yep. So this plan was the plan of subdivision showing the fire hall. It shows the Tower Hill North subdivision. It shows the single family lots that are fronting on Highlands Boulevard, both adjacent to and opposite on the opposite side of the street. So when we use the term best fit. We were trying to find something that fit in the streetscape in this area. So we show the fire hall, we show the 3 lots, and we show the adjoining properties. The other issue that we talked about at the staff level was architectural control. And one of the requirements we have in subdivisions is that there be very strong architectural control to try and improve the streetscape and keep the quality of the housing at a similar level. So one of the reasons we had offered the properties, we are recommending to offer the properties to Tower Hill Developments is that under the subdivision agreement, it puts in place the requirement for architectural control. And we had that in Tower Hill South. We will have it again in Tower Hill North. And we would like to see that architectural control carry over to these 3 lots. The third one is that council has the authority to determine whether a property goes to a first right of refusal. You have the right to approve that recommendation. You have the right to give staff direction to put us in the process of a first right of refusal. So we have established a minimum dollar amount on these properties, and we would work with that as the guide to finalizing a deal with Tower Hill. The last item is I had noted previously in our previous meeting is that we had said that we had paid for the lot services into these lots. We had paid for the water, sanitary, and storm. We could be ultimately responsible for 50% of what they call the public infrastructure. So developers have the right to charge you for the road being built in front of the lots. That's 50% of the roadway, 50% of your gravel, 50% of the pipes. We have not been asked for that yet. We have paid, as I mentioned, the services, but we've not been asked to pay for the road work. So we felt again that that was a consideration and might be a consideration in allowing it as a first right of refusal to Tower Hill Developments. So with that being in front of you, we have recommended that we go with 3 single-family lots. We recommended that we start our planning process, and we recommended that we provide first right of refusal to Tower Hill Developments as a developer of this subdivision.
Okay, thanks for that clarification in the presentation. I think the page number was getting a little off, but this is a bit clearer picture than the zoomed out, but you can see the fire hall there and the 3 lots to the left. Questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, this came up before, and it looks like this has been planned for quite a while because the drops were asked to be put in before Highland was ever constructed. And it bothers me a little bit that they get first right of refusal. I like the idea that you're talking about with the streetscape stuff, but if they don't opt into this deal, or they wanted considerably less money, or start to charge us for other things, what is the process then if we sold, if these actually do declare surplus and we do actually sell them to somebody other than Tower Hill? Do we not still have any control over what is built on those 3 residential lots, or is that beyond our control?
Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Byrne, first of all, if Tower Hill elects not to agree to the price or the condition of the sale of the lots, and we are forced to go to a third party, then we would try at our level to put the architectural control requirements, the other requirements that we would normally have on that property owner. And we probably could do that through the offer to purchase. But at this point in time, we had not looked at that in detail. We'd asked for some legal advice, and we would certainly look at what our options are if Tower Hill does not pick up on the first right of refusal option.
So just to clarify on that note, Wayne, so if, as a part of the recommendation in the report, should they not move forward with that first right of refusal opportunity, what's the process like? Does there a report that comes back to council looking for, I mean, if this is also declaring it surplus and approving sort of the sale, should they not take us up on the offer, or should their opportunity? Is there a process involved with that, or is it just a listing sort of process, or maybe you can provide some clarity on that?
In this case, Mr. Mayor, I think it would be important that we report back to council if Tower Hill did not pick up the option, because that means that we would declare them surplus and we would probably want to go to the open market. To determine how we do that probably is a key to council, so we would report back.
And the expectation then, just to further clarify, is that the minimum valuation that we're moving forward with for that first right of refusal is the 200,000 per lot. Is that just enshrined? Because it's not in the recommendations itself, but it is in the report. So I just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, that is the minimum value that we would accept.
Thank you for that. Other quick, so Council Byrne.
Through the chair, how sure is staff that we wouldn't need this piece of property for something else in the near future? And if we did, how would we ever find that kind of real estate near this facility anywhere else that's cheap?
Who would like to take that one? Ms. Hurley, I mean, the chief could speak to it from a fire standpoint, but other than going through department by department, do you want to talk a bit about the process of review?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. I mean, the process is the process. I mean, we have taken a look at those lots. If we have talked about it multiple times that through management, if there was any other need or if there was any other interest for those properties. No one as of right now, we do not believe we do, and we would never take a report before you if we thought there was any other use to it. So the report before you is based on our discussion internally. It's now up to you to decide as council, but we have already internally discussed this. I believe the last meeting that we talked about, someone questioned with regards to the parking with the fire department. The chief has gone back as well and clarified that. He's certainly here to speak to it, but the answer is no, we do not need it or require it for the parking for the new fire station. Keep in mind, this is a small piece of land. And just to go back, if I may, Mr. Mayor, the comment about this being planned and that the infrastructure was already put in the ground because it was planned. I think Mr. Hancock can explain the reasons why we do that and the reason why to plan for this type of situation now, to do the work and the infrastructure when you can do it, because you certainly don't want to rip it up again. But maybe Mr. Hancock could express the reason or explain the reason why.
Mr. Hancock, I'll go to you, and then Chief, you weren't at the last meeting when the discussion came out, so maybe I'll give you can go after Wayne with regards to the comment on the fire.
Mr. Mayor, through you to, as a follow-up to our CAO, Yvette Hurley, it is our intention to pre-stub property. We pre-stub property to try and avoid future road cuts. We did pre-stub, as I noted before, with 3 sets of services with the intent that some development would happen on the land. The idea was that the roads were moving forward and we had to make some decisions on pre-stubbing at the time in order to avoid that road cuts may happen at a later point. That's the purpose, and it is one, to keep the condition of the roadway in good condition, but also to avoid expensive road cuts at a later point.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and just to echo our CAO's comments and our Director of Public Works. I was asked to evaluate these lots to see if we needed them in the future, and I think to find a balance, and you look at the parking that is currently going to be in the new facility, and is there going to be overflow of parking? What if we need it in the future? There is lands here at the Municipal Hall, and there is going to be a walkway that's incorporated for those occasions where we need it, keeping in mind that the training room occupancy is 60. And if you count the parking lot on those rare occasions, we'll have the overflow parking that's here. And for emergency response, the facility is built for now and into the future, and it's accommodated that emergency response. You would never get 100% attendance at any function, whether it be emergency response or training activities. So we've looked at that and balanced it with senior staff.
Thank you, Chief and Mr. Hancock. Other questions, members of council? Seeing none. The recommendations in the report are that council declare the properties outlined in the draft reference plan attachment number 1 in PW 2024-09 as surplus, and the council directs staff to proceed with rezoning the property to develop 3 single detached residential lots for sale on this property, and the council directs staff to provide Tower Hill Developments with the first right of refusal on the purchase of these lots. Any questions about the motion? If not, we'll entertain a mover and a seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Good discussion, and thanks to coming back with more information on this from the previous meeting. Next is report 10.4, Public Works 2024-21, Water and Wastewater Internal Operations, Transition Plan and Financial Analysis. Ms. Bradley is presenting today. Jessica, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you today is Public Works Report 2024-21, Water and Wastewater Internal Operations, Transition Plan and Financial Analysis. There are 2 recommendations presented. Recommendation 1 is that PW Report 2024-21, Water Wastewater Internal Operations, Transition Plan and Financial Analysis be received for information. And 2, that staff be directed to proceed with bringing the operation of the water and wastewater systems in-house and complete the accreditation process. Since the June 24th meetings, staff have completed a thorough review of the financial impact and logistics with regards to bringing the operations in-house. Over a 5-year period, there is an estimated cost savings of $500,000 for the township if the operation is brought in-house. As shown in the table, the first year there is an initial investment due to purchasing of required equipment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Question, could you maybe provide just a commentary a bit about how we got to here? I'm not sure if Yvette would like to do that, but just a bit about, with the transition away from the city, I know there's been a lot of movement and changes on their side, and that's sort of a part of the process. It was a mutually agreed upon termination, but maybe just provide a bit more of that context, whoever would like to speak to it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. I think you may remember we did report on the matter of terminating the contract with the city of Peterborough. Our termination date was approved by council as March 31st of 2025. We also indicated at that point that we would bring forward a report on the issue of bringing the service or operations in-house, and we would review the financial data of the time. Just as a comment, I think we found that with the city of Peterborough, they're going through a period of changes, and they, although they provided us good service, they probably are not quite the same as we've had in the past. And we felt that in-house people look at things a little differently and provide us with a complete picture of what we need and what we should look at for preventive maintenance. That was number 1. Number 2, there's been a number of other communities that have looked at the same processes, and they basically have elected to bring their services in-house for a number of different reasons. Lakefield has been one of the more recent ones. They've changed over from a PUG operation to bring it in-house. Norwood, of course, has done this some time ago. So we have discussed this process with them and looked at the different operations available, and we felt that this was a good financial move. And with the city of Peterborough opting in a fashion and agreeing to get out of the contract, we felt that this was the time to bring this forward to council.
And just a clarification, Mr. Hancock, on one of the comments. So I think based on some of the words you used, Norwood's transitioned first or before Lakefield. I think Lakefield was fairly recent. Do you know offhand if Norwood's, I'm assuming they did that based on similar projections, have those projections held true in regards to the potential or forecasted, reductions from the alternative outsourcing?
My understanding from Norwood staff and from the operation, they have found the cost effective. They found it basically efficient, and they're quite happy with it that way. And they like the issue that staff are reporting to them on what's happening with their system. So these are key points.
So the only other question I have, and then I'll turn it over to council, sorry for jumping in, is with regards to the staffing, I mean, you mentioned two full-time positions. Obviously Jessica's here and filling gaps and has various certifications and whatnot. But, you know, this is a 24/7 plant. And two individuals, is there other administrative positions or support positions, or is this two individuals consistent with other municipalities and what they expect from a number of individuals? I just think of, you know, vacation scheduling, but also illnesses happen, long-term absences happen, and how would that capacity be fulfilled otherwise in those sorts of instances?
Through you, currently the city of Peterborough, we run about 1.5 operators full-time on a call basis, and it's working great with support from administrative staff and myself. We do have another member, a position in the Public Works Department that will support myself once these duties become more prevalent inside the township, sorry. And I believe that it would be run smoothly because of the size we are currently.
Sorry, one more question based on one of the answers. Is this one of those circumstances as well, as we know there's a movement in, you know, regions of municipalities like ours and within the county? Is this one of those sorts of positions with those two that could have reciprocal arrangements with, you know, Lakefield, for instance, and potentially Norwood for operations in maybe outlier events of, you know, like I said, illnesses or things like that? Because like I said, from my understanding and talking with the folks from the Walkerton Training Center, I mean, there isn't enough of these sorts of trained individuals coming online to meet the demands. So I'm just curious if that would be a potential value or if that's something that's already been considered.
Through Mr. Mayor, we actually have had conversation with the other municipalities and what they call joint operations, and with the opportunity of having staff cover off other staff if we had a problem with staff complement. So we have had those conversations. All the municipalities involved to date have offered their assistance and certainly are looking at anything that can be done cooperatively and anything that can be done to be more cost effective. So we are doing that also.
Okay, thanks for that. Sorry to cannibalize the conversation to start, but Deputy Mayor Huntley has a question.
Through you, Chair, I think you might have touched on a couple of my questions and concerns, which is good. And that was with regard to kind of the transition phase. Is this a case of, you know, you train the trainer and then you bring staff on and you keep training them, or do you need the full complement all at once to get them all up to speed? Like, how long is that bubble period with the current staff versus the current operators and the staff we're gonna bring on? And it sounds like if there's a bit of a gap in there, we do have support from the other municipalities, which is great to hear. So maybe you can elaborate on that one for me, Jess.
So I think through Mr. Mayor to the Deputy Mayor, certainly one of the keys to this is hiring staff, is hiring the operators. We've had conversations with people that are in the industry, and we believe we have candidates for that. So we are in good shape if we elect to go in-house. We have talked to the city about specific items on backup, and we certainly have talked to other municipalities about cooperative use of their staff. So I think we have both as options there if we have problems. But right now, the key to this is hiring the operators and making sure they're in place for before March 31st, so we have a smooth transition.
Through you, Chair. I guess the follow up on that, I guess that was my question. Is it like a hard cut over at March 31st? Then you're expected, you'll have the full complement and you'll run? Or is it a ramp up and kind of thing? So I think you just answered my question, but.
We're expecting that we would have the people in place and the full transfer would happen as of March 31st, but we'll have some activities that take place ahead of time and some certainly that will carry over. And the city's been agreeable to do that with us. They are providing specific lab testing and things like that ongoing, so we're not totally abandoning their services. So we do have that, but the transition is officially to take place on March 31st.
Councillor Edgerton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What class is your wastewater and what class is your water treatment and distribution system? What class of license do they need for that?
Through the chair, our wastewater treatment plant is class 3 and our water treatment is class 2. Thank you.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like the mayor just indicated there, I do understand that looking for people as operators, that there are very, very short people around to do that kind of work, like they're hard to find. You tell me how you intend on getting a hold of two people immediately for that?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Edgerton, we have had conversation with people in the industry. We certainly will go through, a process of, an ad and whatnot, but we do have people that are adequately trained that are interested in this job. So we do have people presently, working in the area that are interested. We certainly, will go out to the industry and, we believe we can find the two individuals for this.
On that same line, in the pessimistic event that by the 31st, we don't have two individuals, what's the circumstances? Is there some sort of continuation agreement with the city of Peterborough for on an interim basis, or how would that circumstance, hopefully, obviously, that's, I think, why we can't go out and hire people until staff have the direction that that's what we're going to do. So I understand that part of the process, but is there a contingency plan, or how would that contingency plan be managed if the event that the hiring for both individuals takes more than the 31st horizon?
To you, Mr. Mayor, we did reach out to the city and we did ask them if they could provide support beyond that. We have not had a formal response to that, but we believe that on a verbal conversation that has been agreed to, but we do need a formal response. So we do believe that they will or can carry on past that date. The other opportunity, we've had a couple of conversations with people that are contract people in the industry. These are people that have retired and they are available also. So we've looked at a number of options. They can provide, they're not interested in full employment. They certainly will come on and run our operation until we do find full employment.
Okay, thanks for that, Wayne. Councillor Ms. Hurley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor to Council. Just to confirm, any hirings that we would do, it would be a public process. So there is a public process under human resources that we would have to follow for any of the hiring of the two people that we're proposing at this time.
Well, we rarely have gossip about potential candidates, so it's nice to even hear that that's a reality, which is very uncommon. Councillor Byrne?
Through the chair, for my benefit, this projection of the 5-year budget, these are going to be permanent full-time staff forever until such time. When I looked at the costing, there's a page and it's got 3 different numbers on it, but page 48 is from a previous guesstimate of what the costs were. And I'm just trying to jive the two together for what is costing us now to have the city of Peterborough actually do this. And there seems to be a huge spread, and I'm not sure if the other numbers aren't accurate. We're only a guess, but just wondered if you could clarify that for me.
If I can provide some clarity, yeah. So I think what Councillor Burns is referring to is the previous just one sequence of the 5-year horizon with regards to the contracted services through the city. I think one of the issues that, and maybe Ms. Hurley could speak to this, or Wayne or Ms. Radley, that there has not been an all-in understanding from the city with regards to those agreed upon rates. And that there's been multiple conversations about additional invoices that we were under the initial understanding that would be covered in the agreement. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Ms. Hurley, you can clarify.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if I really want to do that at this moment. But there are additional costs that are unforeseen when it comes to billing, whether it's they're bringing in people after hours or you bring people in there's the regular pay and then there's the additional costs, or depending upon if there was an emergency. If I may, Mark, can you, the comparator that Councillor Byrne is looking at is from the Schedule 1 fixed price chart from the one that we had with the city of Peterborough. And I think the question was comparing the staffing. To answer the one question, the 2 staffing that's being proposed today, yes, they would be a full-time staff. But I think he's questioning the clarity between the numbers, which is from that one particular chart. So Mark, if you can move to Schedule 1 of the fixed price chart. I think it's 345. There are a couple numbers, Councilor Byrne is correct. It's page 48 in the Schedule 1. That's it. Thank you. Jessica, I think that's where Councilor Burns looking for comparator numbers.
Through the chair to Councillor Byrne, yes, the cost outlined in the schedule before us includes 1.5 operators and some additional administrative staff, but the total cost does encompass outside services, maintenance, transition costs obviously are zero, but maintenance, repair, and chemicals and that sort of deal. Can you please confirm if that's?
Other questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair. So now, in my own mind, we are going to have yourself, Jessica, as lead hand. I don't know where your criteria or your credentials put you in this process. So you'll be there as well as 2 new employees with a certain credited accomplishment to do that job. And it talks about third-party accreditation. Is that an ongoing thing every year that on-site audit has to come in and be done? And what happens if we don't pass that?
So based on the drinking water quality management standards with the Ministry of Environment, you need to be accredited operating authority to run your establishment. To become accredited, there is a first step of becoming it's a limited scope accreditation, and then within 6 months of receiving that, you become fully accredited. And then every year after that, you do go through an internal and external audit process to ensure your quality management system is working as properly.
Other questions? Seeing none, so there are 2 recommendations in the report. Oh, question? Another question, Councilor Edgett? Okay, there are 2 recommendations in the report: that Public Works Report 2024-21 Water Wastewater Internal Operations Transition Plan and Financial Analysis be received for information, and that staff be directed to proceed with the bringing the operation of the water and wastewater systems in-house and complete the accreditation process. Looking for a mover and a seconder with regards to recommendations. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councilor Natshaw. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much for all that information, Jessica and Wayne and Yvette. We'll move on to 10.5, Report Finance 2024-11, Issuance of Debentures, Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation, Ms. Pope.
Thank you. I have before you the 2 bylaws to authorize borrowing upon the amortizing debentures for 2 capital projects, the Parks and Public Works Depot and the Public Works Operations Center, to be funded through the municipal levy and development charges.
So I'm going to sort of take the reins of this one. So this report kept me up at night all weekend. And so we've had lots of conversations with members of council, but also with staff. And so I appreciate the extra hours on answering all my questions. Unfortunately, this is the process that we had to go through to get told what the interest rate was going to be. And 4.28, although it might be fair relative to the existing market, is a significant commitment and a significant rate to be paying over a 20-year period for this amount, especially given the reality that we are on the precipice of receiving a lot of development charge revenue that we've been delayed for quite some time for a myriad of factors. But we are, based on looking at the windows, you can see that there are plans to have a significant amount of the Tower Hill North subdivision under at least construction this year and hopefully completed in some sort of capacity by 2026, probably 20 to 30 to 50%, depending on the market, obviously, as well. So that's a significant revenue from DCs that we've been waiting to collect and are currently in a deficit position, or we were last year, because of the delay to that subdivision that, is arguably, depending on who you ask, 4 to 5 years delayed where it should have been. So we should have had that revenue. But I have a real issue in going into $1.8 million worth of DC debenture debt for a 20-year commitment when we're on the precipice of receiving a significant installation of those funding. So it would be at best a short-term increase in their existing deficit from the roads for these two projects. And I just have a real hard time in getting into a very fixed and very constrained with no ability to revisit the interest rate, but also very restricted ability without significant penalty to pay down the debenture ahead of time. So that's not a great scenario. So I really think that neither of these two bylaws is really in the best fiduciary interest of the municipality at this time. I've talked briefly with members of council, but that's sort of just stating my position on it. I think that we need to not approve either bylaw and ask staff to come back with an alternative funding arrangement that explores additional opportunities given the amount of and the rate that we're being offered from OALC. So those are just my open introductory comments, but I don't want to cannibalize the conversation, and Kimberly's here to answer any questions that other members of council have, and I'd be happy to talk more about and clarify that motion when the conversation's finished. So questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, yes, I have to agree that I think this may be not a good time to move forward with this, but I was kind of impressed by the rate that you pay this off. If we did get into some agreement with the Ontario government, there's probably a few people in the room that have never had a mortgage, but when I looked at this and we start paying off a significant amount of principal in the first payment, is that typical of these type of government loans?
Yes, this is a typical type of loan through OILC, set up by the government as a crown corporation in 2005 and then merged with Ontario Realty Corp in 2011 to try to provide low rates affordability to municipalities and keep the infrastructure in the province of Ontario going with access to this type of a loan environment.
Follow up.
Through the chair, yes, please. So what I was thinking of before we discuss these other options moving forward, the arrangement that we made to buy the solar panels years ago, that was kind of loaning ourselves money. Is that still an option for these kind of like sizable purchases rather than giving somebody else interest? I realize it depends on how much we're actually making on our returns, but is that a doable thing at this size of a project?
At this point in time, it is doable, but again, it depends on the interest rate at the time and also when we'll receive the proceeds from development charges. So with the delay that the mayor has indicated, you have to have a crystal ball to know exactly, but you can take some conservative approaches and possibly look at that over the next 3 to 5 years to see where we end up. So that can definitely be something we can look at.
Other questions, members of council? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, more a comment as well. I guess the considerable amount of this loan that is actually development charges is kind of what really triggered this. And the fact that once those development charges start rolling in, if we sign up for this, then we have the inability to actually pay it off ahead of time. It's not an open loan, from my understanding. So I really think we need to find an alternative to cover off those development charges is in the short term and not expand them, like not pay them off over 20 years. So I do look forward to seeing what options come forward because I can't support this the way it is today.
Councilor Nacho.
Thank you, through you, Chair. As well, a comment. First of all, Mayor, thank you as well for, putting the extra thought into all of this. I share the same sentiments as Deputy Mayor Huntley and Councilor Byrne, and we do look forward to seeing, you're certainly smart. You'll come back with something that I'm excited to see and see how we'll be able to pay this off in the shorter term.
Thank you for that. Other questions? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, just I guess one clarification question is I know that there was a bit of a time constraint on signing these loans back. What happens if we don't?
The OILC is set up to have no fees. However, there are penalties when you don't go forward. And so that was indicated in this report and back in May. So we'll proceed forward with them and work with them on what the options are going forward and what penalties we'll pay.
Yeah, I imagine the penalties might also be influenced whether or not, I think there seems to be a growing consensus about the DC portion. There's still a capital portion as well. So we will still have the option theoretically, or not theoretically, we would still have the option to re-enter into an OILC agreement for the debenture of the amount of the capital if we so choose. But I think the idea is that we kind of have a guesstimate as to what the interest rates in the fixed term are going to be. But we'd like to know on both ends of the DC and the capital if there's alternatives to the OILC now that we know what the rate is that we can expect. So that's I think the discussion is clear with the marching orders, and hopefully that the recommendations will be as well. Any other questions? If not, I'll regurgitate the recommendations so I get it right. So the motions would be that, or the recommendations would be that council does not approve bylaw number 2024-52 and 2024-53 being bylaws to authorize borrowing up on of amortization debentures for two capital projects, Parks and Public Works Depot and Parks and Works Operations Center, and that staff will explore alternative financing options for both projects and report back to council at a later date. Everyone okay and understands that? Moved by Councillor Edgerton, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks, everyone. Good discussion, and we look forward to working the wizardry that only Kimberly can work for all of the myriad of options for financing. Moving on to 10.6, the Harvest Table Dinner Post-Event Report. Ms. Ayad.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the rest of council, the report before council is PEB 2024-46, the Harvest Table Dinner Post-Event Report, with the recommendations that council receive the report on the Harvest Table Dinner, and that council identify and donate $2,500 to local nonprofit organizations within the Township of Cavan-Monaghan. Just a little bit of background, the Harvest Table Dinner was hosted Friday, September 13th. We lucked out weather-wise. It was a beautiful night, very warm during the day setting up, but it was definitely a beautiful night. Leading up to the event, an organizing committee was formed that included staff from all departments and the deputy mayor as the appointed council member. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of the committee members who worked extremely hard. Kyle Phillips, Chris Allison, Nicole Angel, Marissa Sleep, Lauren Hood, Yvette and Adam Gagne, as well as the additional volunteers, my friends to my left, that supported us the day of the event. We were also very lucky. We secured a number of generous sponsors, so I would like to thank them. And they are listed in the report. Feedback from attendees was extremely positive. In the initial May 2024 report, we recommended that any profit from the event be donated to a charity of council's choice. The event actually experienced a slight loss, but due to the generosity of the sponsors listed in this report, the funds allocated through the levy budget weren't actually required. So as such, we're in a position to provide some local nonprofit organizations with a donation. Some are listed in the report for consideration.
Thanks for that, Bridget. Yeah, what a wonderful event. Well attended, and just everyone there had a wonderful evening. So thank you to all the public works staff who volunteered, but also all the work on the committee and deputy mayor on that, and Ms. Hurley as well. I know played a pivotal role in some coordination. So it was really a beautiful evening, and everyone who attended. I had an individual in the locker room last night ask if he was out of town, but his wife attended, and he was quite jealous. So they're hoping that it becomes an annual event. So. Very good. I also spoke with members of council beforehand, and just there seems to be a consensus that we'd be happy to share the 2,500 equally in 3 different distributions to Millbrook Food Share, Millbrook Community Care, and the Mount Pleasant Women's Institute, rather than nitpick between amounts. We don't want to pick favorites, so dividing it amongst the 3 would be appropriate. So, but before we, just so you're aware of that, any questions or comments about the event, Councillor Byrne?
Through the chair, are we going to have a discussion, because it's mentioned about whether this would be biannual or annual? I didn't know if that was going to happen today, or is that going to be a future event?
I would imagine it would be a budget discussion for this year if we wanted to fund it again, and it would be a line item that would be outlined. We have the operational balance that we didn't actually have to utilize thanks to the sponsorship. So it would be, I assume Bridget would bring it forward as she usually does with a few other things that unfortunately we can't do everything. We bring it forward for the budget, but Bridget, do you want to confirm if that's the case?
Definitely. It would be something that we would bring forward as part of our operational budget request, which is where it came forward in the 2024 budget. I would recommend if you want to build attendance, it is something you want to do annually. It's certainly something that the community looks forward to, and it's a great event. The Cavan Monaghan Derby was also a good event. And so it kind of allows you to celebrate two key aspects of your agricultural history, harness racing and local producers. So, but that is for council's decision.
Councillor Natchez?
Just a comment and a feedback from the community. First off, congratulations and thank you to all the staff and all the volunteers. You guys did a exceptional job. And just as like a business owner in the community and as well as from the constituents in my ward, just amazing feedback about the event. I think that you would be successful to do this as a yearly thing. I had a lot of people asking if we were going to be considering to do this as an annual thing. And yeah, I think that you did a wonderful job and kudos to everybody.
Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Chair, I just wanted to echo my sentiments to the staff, that the amount of effort that goes into these things. I don't think people really appreciate that it is a lot of work to pull it off. And when the day of, and it looks like it runs super smooth, they don't see the duck paddling like crazy under the water, which I know is what happens. So it's great. So thank you to staff and everybody for pulling off an amazing event and making it look seamless. It was great.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Other questions, Councillor Byrne?
Through the chair to Bridget, is it possible at some point to get a rough breakdown of the actual costing for the event? Is that possible?
Absolutely. We are, some of the invoices are still coming in, but we could definitely, maybe even as part of the budget discussion, we could bring forward a more detailed breakdown. Absolutely.
Excellent. Seeing no other question, seeing no other questions, I just have to make a slight tweak to accompany. So we have identified 3 organizations in the report, Millbrook Community Care, Millbrook and District Food Share, and Mount Pleasant Institute. So the intention, so now that we clarify that, so the recommendations are that council receive the report on the harvest table dinner and the council donate $2,500 to the 3 local nonprofits identified in the report in equal amounts. Move by equal share. I think it's clear within the discussion. Moved by Councillor Byrne, seconded by Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. Again, congratulations, Bridget, on a great event. Moving on, next is road occupancy permits for special events. Bridget.
Thank you, Mayor. The report before council is PEB 2024-47 road occupancy permits for 2024 special events with the recommendations that council approve the amendment to the schedule for the road occupancy permits for special events on county roads to occupy roads in the township for events, festivals in 2024 as outlined in table 1 in the report. And the second recommendation that the township of Cavan Monaghan provides a certificate of insurance to the county of Peterborough for the scheduled 2024 events, festivals listed in this report. Just for clarification, the amendments to this report are around the Santa Claus parade. I think originally we had put down the 7th. We are changing that to the 14th to coincide with the firefighters dinner, which is the second Saturday in December. And then we are changing the Christmas in the Village from an evening event on December 5th to a daytime event December 7th. And it would be rebranded as a Merry Millbrook Christmas.
Thank you for that, Bridget. So we're just really just amending those 2 dates Any conversation or any questions? Seeing none, we'll look for a mover and a seconder for the two recommendations. Moved by Counselor Burns, seconded by Counselor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Thanks, Bridget. Moving on, Ms. Hurley, CAO, acquisition of lands.
Through you, council, the report before you is to advise publicly that we have purchased what we call referred to as the Tinney property. This is something that the township has looked forward to do for many years. As we know, these properties have been vacant for many years in beautiful Millbrook. It's something that council has, in their wisdom, has decided that if we could potentially purchase them, either for redevelopment and or to sell for development itself, we would go ahead and do so. So I'm very pleased to have this report public for you today. So if council can receive CAO report 2024-05 for information, and that council in the township of Cavan purchased 5 Center Street, the roll number 1509020020012405 and 3 Center Street. And the other roll number is for 15090200201290 for Millbrook. The property was purchased for $2 million on September the 9th. Congratulations, council.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley, for shepherding this along. I know it's been a significant journey, and but I also wanted to thank Mr. Tinney for his foresight and agreeability in working through this process. There's been many attempts in the past to acquire various parcels or all of the parcels of these lands. So I think it's a real victory for council and this council to be the council that's been able to cross the threshold and actually take ownership. And it's really critical to the continued revitalization efforts and keeping the vitality of the village of Millbrook as robust as possible. So great work to staff on that. And I think council, this is something we can look back on with pride. Councilor Byrne, you had a question?
Through the chair, there's nobody here from planning, so I don't know who to ask this, but I'm trying to figure out the difference between the core mix use 2 and 3.
I think, oh, sorry, Ms. Hurley, are you going to answer that question? Your mic's not on, sorry.
Right, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne. I'm not exactly sure what the zoning a core mix means, but if I'd known ahead of time, I would have had that information for you today. But I do know that they're both commercial properties, and we've got the map. Mark, if you could just sort the map right prior to that one, please. Thank you. So they're both commercial properties in the core of Millbrook for mixed use. And the definition of that, I'm not sure at this time, but I can certainly follow up with you.
And then these lands and what, you know, and the staff reports will be coming forward as well as we discuss what the uses will be. So we can definitely make sure that that information comes forward in those future reports as well, just so for consideration, it's important to know what's existing there, but there's also nuance within those things as well with regards to what was pursued for those properties in the historically. So there are a lot of nuances that it's not a generic taste. So anyways, congratulations again, council. Oh, Councilor Burns, sorry.
Through the chair to Kimberly, at some point in the future, could you tell me 3 Center Street, the last 4 digits of the roll number is 1290. The last time that it was updated as far as description of that parcel of land, please?
In what capacity?
Well, 3 Center Street, if we look at that map, used to have an address on number 5 King Street, I believe. And that's now one parcel. So I just wondered when that was updated.
Ms. Hurley?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Byrne. So as of the actual date when we purchased it, the merger took place because there was originally 3 parcels of land. One was 20 King Street, which actually has a house on it. The other one was 3, and the other one was 5 King Street. But because Mr. Tinney had the one particular property merged, it's all now 3 Center Street as per the registrar. So Kimberly wouldn't have that information at this time because I know that it happened right before we actually purchased the property. So sometime this summer.
No, that's correct. I know that it was I think there was actually final strokes on that paperwork. One of the good discussions we're having about the merger of the property. So, okay, very good. We are just, so there's two recommendations in the report. Sorry, I believe there's only one. That council receive report CAO 2024-05 for information, and that Township of Monaghan purchased 5 Center Street, roll number 150902000 2012405 and 3 Center Street, roll 15090200201290, Millbrook, Ontario, LOA 1GO for $2 million on September 19th, 2024. Moved by Councilor Byrne, Councilor Natchoff, seconder. All in favor? That is approved. Council committee verbal reports. Now that we're back at our various committees, anyone have a committee update that they would like to provide? I have a couple. I can go first if you'd like. We had a recent Peterborough Police Services Board meeting that was very well attended and good discussion about the continuation of services. We've also begun discussions about the potential for a public meeting in the Township of Monaghan. I brought that up with the chief. That would be something we would be very much interested in. There's also ongoing conversations about the budget process that the city is going through, but it was a good meeting. Not much other to report for the township in that regard. In addition, I just wanted to again thank everyone at the BIA and also a number of volunteers for the Fall Festival this weekend. Really well attended. Lots to do. And it was also nice to see so many local associations getting that sort of exposure to so many people in the community. Hopefully that can help with some of the volunteerism and board appointments that we need. I know a few people even at the Harvest Dinner as well raised questions about how are there opportunities for me to get more involved or learn about, working with the township for things that I'm interested in. So I think giving that exposure was fantastic, in addition to the BIA also making a contribution back in funds to community care as well. So great job on that regard. And the library board meeting, we did have a meeting last month and we discussed, the majority of the discussion was around the budget preparation. So we provided the first draft, and the finance committee at the library board, as well as the board itself, will be continuing to tweak and update things as information comes in with regards to 2025 budget. I think those are the majority of my updates. Other councilors, Councilor Natchoff.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Committee, we had our monthly meeting. Some heated discussions about the potential changes to the allowability of the committee for construction projects and stuff. So just more information will be shared over the coming events. Kudos to Chris Allison and the rec department on the completion of the bridge. Just looks great. Great feedback from everyone. Yeah, otherwise that was it. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, you kind of stole my thunder about the Fall Harvest Festival, but it was a big success. A lot of work went into it. And it was a big payoff, huge community turnout, lots of happy smiling faces, and really consistent visitation through the whole thing, which was fantastic to see right to the end. So hopefully we can continue that trend and only build upon it. Things will run smoother and greater as we keep going. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Deputy Mayor. Also, I'm Mia Copa on my end, Chief. I also attended on Sunday the graduation from the Fire Academy as well, and we have 4 new grads joining our fire service. So it's always a pleasure to be there, and seeing the new generation and all the proud families is always a really sort of heartwarming experience. So Mia Culpa by me on that one, Chief, but it was a very well event, and we're looking forward to further meeting with and enjoying the contribution to the community that those 4 representatives will have. Nice to see a father and son team there too. That was quite sentimental. So sorry about that. Councilor Natchoff.
Thank you, Mayor, through you, Chair. As well, just an added follow-up to all the great help volunteers in the BIA on a great fall festival. As a business owner, it was a really good, successful event, really great turnout, really positive. Seeing more new people from the community, just out and about, and just really positive feedback as to the new residents and how they're excited and appreciative of the events that were happening. So obviously weather played a big hand in it, but really good event. And so kudos especially to the BIA for all their hard work. Thank you as well to the chief for helping us try to coordinate new regulations, or not maybe per se new regulations in conjunction with vendors, but how we're moving forward with food vendors. So we really appreciate your feedback and support. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Natchoff. Deputy Mayor Huntley, one more time.
We seem to be in the habit of, remembering things a little after the fact, but thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. Again, I did want to actually call out the Sustainability Committee for our Rainbow Arrow program, which we've been working with Kyle and Bridget for a while now, trying to get it running. We got it out, we got it on the street for the Fall Festival, and I think Bridget was selling rain barrels like hotcakes out there. So it was a massive success from that committee, and just going to promote us to do it again and do even more. It's a great thing, and it's nice to see the efforts of committee. I know you're talking about the bridge and the Melbourne Valley Trails, but a committee meets, the committee does things, and the committee leaves, and there's times where you just kind of feel like you really need to see something tangible, and this was a really big tangible win. So hats off to the Sustainability Committee for pulling that off.
Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, just trying to stay engaged with the parents and the families of all the children in the township with the outcry about what's going on with the school board decisions. There's going to be a meeting October 10th this week, Thursday night from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Millbrook South Cavan School to try to get some information on how the actual thing is going to work if they go the way they're going. So I just want to bring that to people's attention, please.
Yep, you stole my thunder on that one too for the community events coming up. But yeah, and also I should say it was nice to see both myself, Councillor Byrne, and Councillor Edgerton were in attendance at that more recent school board meeting where a number of parents made delegations as well. So there's a lot of advocacy going on in addition to the letter we sent, but hopefully there's more clarity on the 10th. I believe it's at 7 p.m. Is it 6 p.m.? 6 p.m. 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Millbrook South Cavan School. So add that to your calendars if that is of interest. And I'm sure it will be for many. Can I get a motion to receive those committee verbal reports? Moved by Councillor Natchoff, seconded by Councillor Byrne. All in favor? That is approved. General business, there is no general business. There is no correspondence for information. There is no correspondence for action. Bylaws being bylaw number 20. Oh, sorry, I got to make an adjustment for that. Bylaws, that bylaw number 2024-54 being a bylaw respecting the fair and transparent accountable procurement of goods and services for the Township of Cavan-Monaghan, be read a first, second, third time and passed the 7th day of October, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Byrne, Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Any just confirming that was okay. Perfect. There is no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. The confirming bylaw being that bylaw number 2024-55 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held October 7th, 2024 be read a first, second, third time and passed the 7th day of October, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Natchoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Lastly, a motion to adjourn the meeting. Moved by Councillor Natchoff, seconded by Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. There's a number of upcoming events. I won't go over the school board meeting on the 10th again, but Cavan-Monaghan Public Library Board meets Tuesday, October 15th at 7 p.m. at the Millbrook branch. The next regular council meeting is Monday, October 21st at 1 p.m. in the council chambers. Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Committee meeting is is Monday, October 28th at 4 p.m. in the township office. Town Hall Consulting Municipal Strategic Plan Open House, Tuesday, October 29th at 4 p.m. And that's going to be over at the CMCC. The Sustainability Advisory Committee meets Friday, November 1st, 2024 at 1 p.m. And then the subsequent regular council meeting is Monday, November 4th at 1 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the week.